In this part, we're going to learn how to convert fractions into decimals without the use of a calculator. There are other ways besides fractions that we commonly express parts as parts of a whole. One of them is through decimals. Find the decimal representation of the following fractions. Number 1 is 1/4. So let us go to the whiteboard and work this out without the use of a calculator.
Example number 1, we are asked to convert 1/4 into a decimal, and we're not supposed to use a calculator. Well, if we're going to do this without a calculator, what we have to understand is that this means 1 divided by 4. Or we can look at this as a long division problem where we have 4 goes into 1. But we see that 4 does not go into 1. So what we're going to do is going to put 0.0 and bring up the decimal point there and say 4 goes into 10. Now we know 4 goes into 10 2 times. So I'll put 0.2, and then here I'll put 0.8. So we'll look at it as 10 minus 8, and now we're left with 0.2. And then we'll add a 0 here, and we'll look at it as 4 goes into 20. Well, 4 goes into 25 times, so I'll put a 5 over here. And so 4 times 5 would be 4 times that would be 0.20. And if we subtract it, we'll get 0. So that means that 1/4 will be equal to 0.25. And if you are able to, you could check it on your calculator and see that indeed it is equal to 0.025.
Returning to the PowerPoint, we saw on the whiteboard how we can get that 1/4 is equal to 0.25. In example number 2, we have 7/8. Now let us go to the whiteboard and work that out in detail without the use of a calculator to see how we can convert this into a decimal.
In example number 2, we're asked to convert 7/8 into a decimal. Well, this means 7 divided by 8. So again, like we did in example number 1, we're going to look at this like a long division problem. So we're going to look at it as 8 divided 8 goes into 7, but we know 8 doesn't go into 7, so we're going to put 7/0, and I'm going to put a decimal point underneath over there, and I'm going to make it behave as though it's 8 goes into 70, but I'm going to bring down the decimal. Well, 8 goes into 70 8 times, and that would be 8, and 8 is 64, so we'll put down 6.4. And then if we subtract that, we'll get 0.6. And we continue to do this. So 8 goes into 6. Well, 8 can't go into 6, so we'll just put a 0 here. And 8 goes into 60 7 times. So 8 times 7 is 56, so I'll put 0.56, and then I will subtract and I'll get 0.04, and then I'll go 8 goes into 4. Well, then it doesn't go into 4, so I'll add a 0 for 40, and 8 goes into 40. Well, it goes into 45 times, and so I'll put it into the next place, and that means we'll put 0.040. So if we subtract them, we end up getting 0, so it terminates there. So this implies that 8 over 7 is equal to 0.875.
Returning to the PowerPoint, we saw on the whiteboard how we can get from 7/8 to 0.875 without the use of a calculator. In example number 3, we're given 1/3, and we want to be able to round this to the nearest hundredth. So let's go to the whiteboard and work this out in detail to see why we have to round this to the nearest hundredth and what that means.
In example number 3, we have 1/3. So we're going to go about it the same way as we did 1 and 2. So we have 3 goes into 1. Well, we know we can't. 3 doesn't go into 1, so we'll put 1.0, bring up the decimal point here, and we'll say that 3 goes into 10, and it goes in 3 times to make 9. And then we'll subtract that off and get 0.1. And we'll continue. 3 does not, so we're going to add a 0 here. 3 goes into 10. 3, and we'll get 0.09. So we'll get 0.01. And again, we're going to continue it. So 3 goes into 10 3 times, and we go 0.009, and we end up with 0.003, and 1. So we can continue on like this, but we only are asked to round it to 2 decimal places. So this decimal place, we only had to bring it out to the tens, hundreds, thousandths decimal place so that we can round it. And since this is a 3 and it's smaller than 5, that means 1/3 is approximately 0.33 rounded to the nearest hundredth, or 2 decimal places.
Returning to the PowerPoint, we saw on the whiteboard how we can get that 1/3 is approximately 0.33. In example number 4, like in example number 3, we want to round 22 over 89 to 2 decimal places when we turn it into a decimal, which means we're going to round it to the nearest hundredth. Let us go to the whiteboard and work this out in detail.
In example number 4, we're asked to convert 22 over 89 into a fraction. So we go about it the same way. We're just going to play the long division game. And we're going to put 89 divided by 22. And we know 89 can't go into 22, so I'm going to put a 0 and pretend it's 89 goes into 220. Well, 80, and bring the decimal point up here. So it's going to be 2. and that means 2 times 89 is 1. And then I put 0.78 and subtract like I would long division. And I would get 0.420, 442. Now 89 cannot go into 42 or 0.42, so I'm going to put a 0 here. But 89 can go into 420, and it can go into 424 times. So in example number 4, point be 356, but since this is decimals, I'll put 0.23 over 89, and then I will subtract into a fraction. So we go about it the same way. We're just going to play the long division game. Point, and we're going to put 89 6 divided by 22. 4. And we know 89 can't go into 22. But I'm adding the O because I already know that it won't go into 64. Pretend it's 89 goes I automatically 220. Oh, well, 80, because now I have to bring it to the next decimal place to figure out, is this 4 going to remain a 4, or will it become a 5? It all depends on what the next and then I put 0.78. So it turns out that 89 like I goes into 440, and I would get 7 times 4, 2, or 4, 2. Now 89, tell us, so I'm not going to bring it any further than this because I already know now, since I only have to put a 0 here to the second decimal place, or but 89 can go into 400. So I know that point, and it can go into 424 times 7. So 89 times 4. So I'll put point 256 7. But since this is approximately, I'll put 0.352. And then I will subtract. So this means that 22 over 89 is about 0.0640. But I'm adding the O because I already know that it won't go into 64. So I automatically added on the O, because now I have to bring it to the next decimal place to figure out, is this 4 going to remain a 4, or will it become a 5? It all depends on what the next place is. So it turns out that 89 goes into 440 7 times. So this will tell us, so I'm not going to bring it any further than this because I already know now, since I only have to bring it to the second decimal place or the hundredths place. So I know that 0.247 is approximately 0.25. So this means that 22 over 89 is about 0.25. Returning to the PowerPoint, we found that 22 over 89 is approximately 0.25 when we round to 2 decimal places or the nearest hundredth. In example number 5, what is 1/4 written as a decimal? So here we're given the word 1/4. So here basically we just have to understand that 1/4 is when we say 1/4, we mean the fraction 1/4. And since we already worked this one out in example number 1, we already know that 1/4 is equal to 0.25. In example number 6,
we're asked what is 5/8 written as a decimal. So here, again, we have to figure out what the words mean. 5/8, write it as a fraction, and then work it out as a decimal. So let us go to the whiteboard and work this out.
In example number 6, we figured out what the words meant is 5/8. So again, we're going to use our long division trick to do this. 8 goes into 5. We're going to go 0.0 and put a decimal point up here. So 8 goes into 50 6 times. We'll put 4.8, 48. Bring down the decimal point. 2, 8 goes into, add the 0, 20. 8 goes into 20 2 times. We're going to put 0.16. Bring down the decimal point. 0, 4. Add our 0. 8 goes into 40. 5 times. 0.040. And so it terminates there. In example number 4, so we can say now that 5/8 is equal to, we're asked to 0.22 to 5/89. No need to round because it terminates a fraction. Goes in nice. So we go about it the same way. We're just going to play the long division game. And we're going to put 89 divided by 22. And we know 89 can't go into 22, so I'm going to put a 0 and pretend it's 89 goes into 220. Well, 80, and bring the decimal point up here. So it's going to be 2. And that means 2 times 89 is 1. And then I put 0.78 and subtract like I would long division. And I would get 0.420, 442. Now 89 cannot go into 42 or 0.42, so I'm going to put a 0 here. But 89 can go into 420, and it can go into 424 times. So 89 times 4, so I'll put 356. But since this is decimals, I'll put 0.356. And then I will subtract. And I'll get 0.0640. But I'm adding the O because I already know that it won't go into 64. So I automatically added on the O because now I have to bring it to the next decimal place to figure out, is this 4 going to remain a 4 or will it become a 5? It all depends on what the next place is. So it turns out that 89 goes into 440 7 times. So this will tell us, so I'm not going to bring it any further than this because I already know now, since I only have to bring it to the second decimal place or the hundredths place. So I know that 0.247 is approximately 0.25. So this means that 22 over 89 is about 0.25.
Returning from the whiteboard to the PowerPoint, we found that 5/8 is equal to 0.65. Thank you very much. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Take care and be well. Bye.